Hundreds of thousands of people have taken to the streets of Istanbul in Turkey in another night of anti-government protests. They're demonstrating against the detention of a prominent opposition politician. Ekrem İmamoğlu has been in custody over corruption and terrorism-related allegations since Wednesday. Today, he was taken to court under police escort to answer questions by prosecutors. He denies the allegations against him. İmamoğlu supporters have been gathering in Istanbul and other major cities for 4 nights in a row now, defying a government-imposed ban on protests. Demonstrators accuse President Recep Tayipp Erdogan's government of trying to sideline his chief political rival in the run-up to presidential polls. Joining me from Istanbul with the very latest is DW's correspondent Dorian Jones. Ekrem İmamoğlu has appeared in court in Istanbul. What happened?
Well, in fact, the legal process is still going on. Ekrem İmamoğlu has been giving evidence to prosecutors, along with 90 other defendants linked to this major case of corruption and a terror indictment. What the process is still going on is that after this evidence has been given, the judges will then decide whether to continue with the case and, crucially, whether to jail İmamoğlu pending his court case. That would be potentially months, if not years, and would effectively remove him from the political scene in Turkey if the judges do go ahead with following up with these charges.
We've seen police cracking down on demonstrators, arresting hundreds of people. Despite this and despite bans on protests in major cities, people are out again tonight. What is driving them?
Well, yes, certainly there is a massive protest here in Istanbul. Hundreds of thousands surpassing the large protests yesterday, and we've seen witnessing similar protests all across the country. These protests do appear to be gathering momentum and spreading across this large country. Provincial cities, towns, as well as Turkey's major cities are now witnessing big protests, despite police efforts to crack down using water cannons and rubber bullets, and that there is this major political ban on protests across Turkey's major cities. And I think what is causing such outrage and anger is, I think there's a recognition around the opposition that this is a critical moment in Turkey's democracy. The fact that such a prominent politician as Ekrem İmamoğlu, a man widely seen as the only man who could defeat Erdogan in presidential polls, is facing major prison sentences, and these prosecutions come just days before he was going to receive the nomination from his party to stand for the presidency, has caused the fear that basically if this prosecution continues and succeeds, Turkey is heading towards a Russia-like country whereby the president picks and chooses who stands against him. And coupled with the fact that the country is in the grip of a major cost of living crisis, a great deal of anger towards the government is creating a perfect political storm for President Erdogan.
So what's the opposition going to do if it can't announce Ekrem İmamoğlu as their official presidential candidate tomorrow?
Well, the party are insisting they're carrying on ahead with this procedure where there's going to be basically a primary. In fact, İmamoğlu is the only person on the list where members of the party are all across the country are going to turn out and to vote, and they all expect to overwhelmingly vote for İmamoğlu. In fact, the leader of the People's Republican Party has said that this is a moment to mobilize in support of İmamoğlu. And I think the key thing here from the opposition is they want to keep the momentum going over the protests over İmamoğlu's detention and prosecution. So I think that there's going to be a further confrontation possibly with the authorities and police as they continue to step up their protests over İmamoğlu's prosecution and expected detention.
And Dorian, remind us briefly why the man at the centre of these protests, İmamoğlu, is such a popular figure in Turkey.
Well, he made his name, but the fact that he has 3 times won the mayoral election here in Istanbul, and this city for more than 2 decades was Erdogan's political stronghold. And the fact that he's managed to do this is because he has his ability to step beyond his normal secular political base of his party. He can reach out to Turkish nationalists, Kurdish voters, and crucially even Erdogan's religious voters as well. And that broad appeal, and coupled with a common touch, is why he is seen as such a political enemy and threat to President Erdogan.
Dorian Jones for us in Istanbul. Thank you very much.
For more, let's cross over to Gönul, a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C. Good to have you with us. Now, Ekrem İmamoğlu is facing these charges, including graft and aiding a terrorist group. How would you qualify these allegations?
Well, it has no legal grounds and it is completely political. If you read the indictment and what the prosecutors have been saying, they are purely based on hearsay. There is no real witness. The one witness that they have is a what they call a secret witness, where a witness can hide their identity. And if you look at the charges too, again, they have no legal bearings. And one of the terrorism charges especially is considered outrageous by not only İmamoğlu's own supporters, but also by people in Erdogan's own party, the AKP. This is happening at a time when Turkish government itself is talking with the PKK's jailed leader Öcalan, and yet one of the charges directed at Ekrem İmamoğlu is having links to the PKK. So this is clearly politically motivated.
How much of a challenge would Ekrem İmamoğlu pose to President Erdogan if he were to run in the next elections in 2028?
Well, according to the most recent polls, he is a formidable challenge, and most polls show him ahead of President Erdogan. Now, let's remember Erdogan is facing a very difficult domestic scene where Turkish economy is not doing well, and he put someone else, Mehmet Şimşek, the new finance minister, in charge to fix the economy, and yet it is not really getting any results. Just recently, Turkey's top business organization criticized Mehmet Şimşek's economic program, saying that it's not delivering results, and that is an unprecedented criticism from Turkey's top business organization, which suggests that it's really Turkish economy is in huge trouble. And there are also other problems. Turkish institutions have been hollowed out. There is no rule of law, and people are suffering. They are frustrated. So at a time when Erdogan is facing so many challenges, there is a leader, Ekrem İmamoğlu, who is charismatic, who has the same chemistry with the voters, and who many people think that he can appeal to a much larger base, not just his secularist base, but also conservatives, Turks and Kurds, and those are all seen as a huge threat by Erdogan.
And speaking of the people's frustrations, looking at these protests, help us understand this level of public mobilization in the wider context of Turkish political history. For example, in comparison to the Gezi Park protests of 2013, what does this tell us about the depth of public discontent?
Well, 2013 Gezi Park protests were on a much wider scale protest, and more people showed up to protest. But these are the early days. Let's remember, this is the fourth day. And even then, the protests have spread across the country. So they're not just in Istanbul, big cities like in Ankara, but everywhere. Even in Erdogan's hometown, Rize, people took to the streets to protest İmamoğlu's arrest. But here we have to underline that these voters are taking a huge risk, because there's something that Erdogan learned from 2013 Gezi Park protests, that he cannot allow such widespread street movements. And that's why he has taken steps since 2013 to make sure that doesn't happen. So far, police has been cautious in using violence, although in the last 24 hours we clearly see that police is ramping up violence against protesters. So this is a very critical moment, and tens of thousands of people are taking a huge risk, which suggests the level of frustration.
Okay, Gönul, Senior Fellow at the Middle East Institute in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
Thanks for having me.